Some say that you should never ever judge a book by its own cover, but here's one thing that you can judge: film titles. These gloriously magnificent blocks of text are something that you should see daily. It's been in every poster in the theater for you you have seen all the time, and it's been on screen in every film that you have ever seen. But sometimes there are lots of films that had their titles changed, some before, during, or after production, or maybe during the film's theatrical release. If there's one thing that's left in common, that these titles are very confusing. And there's no way to get into it, they are really confusing. Let's start off in 1951, when a film called Mother Riley Meets the Vampire was released, starring Arthur Lucan and Bela Lugosi. Or at least if that's what they look like as shown in the film's original theatrical poster or some sort. When it was originally released in theaters, it was called Mother Riley Meets the Vampire. Mother Riley. Yeah, Mother Riley. As in Arthur Lucan. You know, that guy? Anyways, the film was actually called Mother Riley Meets the Vampire. However, when it was being released in other parts of the world, it was retitled to Vampire Over London, with this rather bizarre looking poster in which Bela Lugosi makes a really odd looking face like he's up to something no good. Yeah, I guess Dracula must have had a problem lately, but I mean, come on, what's with the Vampire Over London title? There's no way they can ever call it that. Why did they call it Vampire Over London for some reason? I have no idea. But in 1964, however, the film was re-released and retitled as My Son the Vampire. Now I had to ask, why is the film called My Son the Vampire in its re-release? That seems a bit weird. So let me get this straight here for a moment. The film was originally called Mother Riley Meets the Vampire, that then gets retitled in other parts of the world as Vampire Over London, and then got re-released in 1964 and retitled as My Son the Vampire. Could this mean that this film had 3 titles? Seriously, who comes up with this stuff anyway at all? Am I right? But we do know the reason why. American distributors couldn't even think of a better title for this particular film. They were gonna go for the Vampire Over London title, but somehow it just didn't even work at all. Who else would have been responsible for coming up with this title? Oh, we know a better reason why. Yep, Alan Sherman to the rescue, as his song My Son the Vampire was released in 1962 and became a massive hit everywhere that year. And because of that, this film was re-released and renamed it as My Son the Vampire. The only reason being was that Alan Sherman's song came right before the release of the film. It's a good thing that he really did that, right? Nah, it wouldn't have been. The biggest problem came in 1980 with the release of Airplane. Did anyone remember that film? The one that had that infamous image that scared everyone in their nightmares, and the one that is shown in every single airplane related item ever. And yes, it's also the one that had that stupidly botched up version of that shot that was shown in the original trailer for the film, minus the title zooming. However, we already know the film as Airplane. We clearly already remember the title, right? It's in the trailer, it's in the film, and heck, it's even in the original poster, for Christ's sakes. However, in some countries like Australia, Airplane had its title changed to Flying High. I mean, come on, really? Flying High? Are you serious? That title already happened when I was watching the film back in 2020 and 2021, for Christ's sakes. So why is the film actually called Flying High for some reason? Well, it was all because of one film. The Concorde Airport 79. Now before I get into the following, I might want to thank one guy, Mark Minty Bishop, for giving me information for this particular part of the video. Anyways, I might go ahead and tag him in the description so you can actually check him out, and the original information in his Airplane video, for some reason. So let's get into it. The Concorde Airport 79 was released in 1979, hence the 79 in the title there. But however, the film was actually released in 1979 in the States, because the Australian release was pushed back to 1980, the same year that Airplane was supposed to come out. So we have 2 films, both of which involving planes, being released at the same time. Why in the ever-loving heck would those two films ever come out at the same time? And what the heck is with the confusion? Well, this is because the distributors thought that the title of Airplane may be too similar to that of the Concorde Airport 79, and may cause the confusion that both films would have come out at the exact same time, and audiences would have feared that Airplane would be another one of those disaster epics. Basically what came before the revival era in the mid-90s thanks to films like Twister. So what did they do? They took the original Airplane title and renamed it to Flying High. As for the poster, they just straight up used the original US poster and adapted it for the Australian market. Hence the Flying High title and the different upper tagline, which wasn't really a tagline but more of a quote, compared to the one in the US poster, where they not only decided to make fun of 9/11, but also make fun of Superman from the original 1940s cartoons. It's no reason why they would use the two taglines in the same poster for some reason. Now, even though the Australian poster did feature the same artwork as the US release, it did not feature any alternative artwork ever elsewhere. However, in 1982, they did get the alternative artwork for some reason. It looked like this, and it looks terrifying. It was even way more scary than the actual original poster for some reason. And guess what? It looks way more different than what it did. Compared to the other poster, it's completely different. The clouds are different, the sky is different, and even the plane looks different. The knot is different, the nose is different, the tail is different, and even the friggin' wings and engines look completely different for some reason. I have no idea why. I may have a strong connection with the original US version of the image, but the Australian one, however, I have no idea what was going on in that one. It looks freaking awful. God awful in my own humble freaking opinion. I guess that's the reason why the film actually failed for being way too misleading. And while we're on the subject of posters, I just had to ask, what the heck is up with that Czech Republic poster? I couldn't even believe a thing about that poster at all. I mean, just look at it. It literally just features a plane smashed in half with birds flying all over the place. How the heck did they just use that as the poster for that particular country? This poster is a complete total nightmare compared to the other Airplane posters that we have seen before. However, in the Czech Republic, the film wasn't even called Airplane, not even Flying High, but it was actually called Buckle Up Please. Yep, Buckle Up Please. Yeah, this film was so bad it even needed seatbelts for that one. The second film, Airplane 2 the sequel, suffered the exact same fate as the first one. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Airplane 2 the sequel. I think it's a big slap in the face to the first one. This film is a holy grail in the history of cinema. However, in some countries like Australia, like I just mentioned, Airplane 2 the sequel had its title changed to Flying High 2. Yep, that's right, they brought the Flying High title into the second one, of course. But that doesn't even stop the on-screen version of the Airplane 2 title from getting its own title changes, as in that part of the globe, on screen of course, Airplane 2 the sequel was retitled to, and you're not gonna believe this actually freaking happened, Flying High 2, open bracket the sequel, close bracket. I cannot believe they did this. They literally put brackets in the subtitle. I cannot believe they did that. Why can't the original US title get brackets in the subtitle? It needs to have brackets in the subtitle for some reason. And don't even get me started on the original trailer for that film, which featured a whole entire cast list of people that do appear in the film, along with a list of people that don't appear in the film, including a gag involving the 3D gimmick. Yeah, that clearly says something about that really weird trailer. Bizarre. And even now, in that part of the globe, 45 years after the original film's release, both Airplane and Airplane 2 the sequel are known as Flying High and Flying High 2 respectively, and at this stage, they probably will be forevermore. And even if you do get that double feature set containing the two Airplane films, then chances are, just to let you know, that these two films are known as the Flying High films. The last stop here comes at the most recent affair, with Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn, which was released in 2020. When the film was originally released, it was actually called that overly long mouthful of a title, but for whatever reason, on the day of its release, the weekend actually of course, the film never actually caught on with the public eye, and for whatever reason, it bombed. It bombed way more harder than expected. Heck, it even bombed way more harder than it did back in 1980, when Airplane was released, and that film failed hard. So to reflect this box office failure, Warner Bros., however, before they completely sold their distribution deals to another company, changed the title from Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn to Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey. Yep, they literally put Harley Quinn's name at the top of the title, completely removing the Birds of Prey from the rest of the film. But it turns out this was actually made as a mistake for some reason, as it was completely reverted all the way back to Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn, which is basically something that Airplane should have done from the get-go. There are over tons of films that literally had their titles changed. In fact, most of those films clearly had their titles changed for various other reasons, and they clearly do that for most of the other time. In fact, if there's one thing that you can't actually judge for some reason, that is that you can judge a film by its film title.